I came home from the hospital cradling a new life in my arms, soft, warm, trusting. My daughter. My entire world. The house was too quiet. No balloons. No welcome sign. No family waiting with smiles or flowers. Just silence. Ethan didn't even look up when we walked through the door. He was on the couch, feet up, scrolling on his phone like nothing had changed. I took a slow breath, laid our daughter in the bassinet, kissed her forehead, and walked straight to the study. The safe was behind the bookshelf, combination lock, one only Ethan and I knew. My hands trembled slightly as I turned the dial, not from fear, but from instinct. Something was off. I opened the door. Empty. Every last item gone. The platinum necklace from my 30th birthday. The sapphire ring my dad left me in his will. The certificates of deposit from my business. And the cash, all of it. $870,000.
Gone.
I walked back into the living room. Where's my jewelry? I asked. Ethan didn't even pretend to misunderstand. He let out a slow breath and shrugged, eyes still on his phone. My mom needed it more, so I gave it to her. I stood still. He looked up finally, annoyed more than apologetic. You're overreacting. It's not like you can't make more. You always land on your feet. She's struggling, Madison. I thought about the baby I'd just delivered, about the hours of labor, about the sleep I hadn't had, about the years I'd spent building my business from nothing, managing every dollar, investing with care, turning grief from my father's death into purpose. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't even ask questions. I just nodded. Okay. He looked confused. Okay. I picked up my daughter, held her to my chest, and walked upstairs. He went back to scrolling. He thought it was over, but it had just begun. My name is Madison Cole, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me, because they thought childbirth made me weak, but it gave me the strength to cut blood ties without blinking. I wasn't born with much, but my father made sure I had something to build on. He was a quiet man, a craftsman. He taught me how to use my hands before I ever learned to balance a checkbook. When he passed away, he left me two things, his workshop and a small inheritance. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to honor his name, and enough to make something of my own.
So I did.
I took those tools, his workbench, and a few raw gemstones he'd stashed away, and I built Coal and Flame, a custom jewelry business specializing in handcrafted wedding bands, one-of-a-kind pendants, and heirloom redesigns. I started in the garage. Etsy orders, then Instagram. Then the orders doubled, then tripled. I reinvested every dollar, got a small storefront, hired 2 assistants, booked clients months in advance, featured in local magazines, eventually syndicated in a national bridal catalog. It wasn't overnight. It was 10 years of late nights, canceled vacations, burnt fingers, and pride I didn't know I could carry. And when I married Ethan, I thought he understood that what I built wasn't just money. It was blood, patience, and legacy. He used to call me his golden girl. Said I had the Midas touch. But what he really meant was, you'll clean up everything I ruin. The first year of our marriage, I paid off his student loans. $42,000, gone with a single transfer. When his car broke down, I bought him a new one, in cash, because he didn't want another hit to his credit. When his mom fell behind on her mortgage, I wrote the check. Quietly, without being asked twice. She never once said thank you. Never even looked me in the eye. She called me lucky. Told Ethan I was just a pretty face who got a lucky break with her little beads and charms. I once overheard her laughing on the phone. Madison makes cute things. But let's be honest, she wouldn't last a day if she had a real job. Still, I hosted her birthdays, bought her spa gift cards, paid for her root canal, because I believed that generosity would eventually earn respect. I believed that kindness would come back. But all it did was teach them they could take from me without limits, and I'd stay. When we renovated the house last year, I paid for 80% of it. Ethan promised we'd co-own everything. The documents never made it to my inbox. I asked twice. Then I let it go. I told myself, you're family now. Don't be petty. But I should have been. Because while I was busy healing from labor, learning to nurse, and fighting off postpartum panic in a hospital bed, they were busy unlocking the safe and deciding I'd had enough. 3 days after I came home from the hospital, I sat in the nursery with my daughter asleep on my chest and a numbness in my bones I couldn't shake. It wasn't the exhaustion that I expected. It was the violation. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face saying, "My mom needed it more," like it was a receipt he could crumple and toss. So while my daughter slept, I opened my laptop. There were security cameras in the hallway. Ethan had insisted on installing them last year after a neighborhood break-in. "I want to protect what matters," he'd said. Funny. I scrolled through the footage, knowing exactly what I was looking for. There it was. Timestamp, 9:42 p.m., the night after I was admitted into the maternity ward. Ethan, his mom, in front of the safe. They weren't rushed. No panic. They even laughed. She wore gloves. He carried a duffel bag. At one point, she picked up one of the necklaces, the one I wore on our wedding day, and put it around her neck. Twirled in front of the mirror like a child. He smiled, kissed her forehead. My stomach dropped. I paused the video, stared at their frozen faces. The mother-son duo smiling with my father's inheritance in their hands. That was the moment the last of my love for Ethan cracked and dissolved. I checked my business email out of habit and saw something in the spam folder, an alert from a resale monitoring site I used for trademark protection. Someone had listed a custom piece matching my original bridal necklace. One of one. Identical markings. I clicked the listing.
Sold.
48 hours after I gave birth. I opened my banking app next. Found 3 large transfers, each just under the fraud detection threshold, sent from our joint account to an unfamiliar checking account. The name on the receiving end? Nancy Fields. Ethan's mother. The same woman who once said, "I never wanted Ethan to marry someone who worked with her hands." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't tell Ethan. I Googled attorneys. By morning, I had a consultation booked with one of the most respected family and financial litigation firms in the state. Her name was Tessa Lane.
Cold eyes, sharp mind.
I laid everything out. She didn't blink. "You're not just dealing with theft," she said. "You're dealing with a coordinated betrayal. And if you want to make this right, we move in silence."
So I did.
I moved with the quiet of a woman who'd already buried her illusions. Every day, I fed my daughter, and then fed the case. I downloaded statements, archived footage, pulled screenshots, recorded every conversation, even the casual ones. I smiled at Ethan like nothing had changed. Cooked dinner. Kissed him goodnight. He didn't see it, but something colder than rage had taken root in me. And soon, they would feel just how sharp silence could be. The day I moved my business, I wore my quietest smile. Coal and Flame had always been legally mine, but like many married women juggling motherhood and business, I'd let too much blur. Ethan helped with client meetings once or twice. His mother claimed she gave advice about branding. Suddenly, they were calling it the family business. Not anymore. With Tessa's help, I restructured the company under a new LLC with a revised name, Cole Legacy Designs. Clean, separate, untouchable. I changed the business address, refiled the trademarks, and froze any connected banking access Ethan might have had, including the Venmo account he once used to borrow money without asking. Then came the house. It was registered jointly, or so I thought. But the land had originally belonged to my father, deeded into a trust years before his death. Ethan convinced me to make it official and sign a co-ownership agreement. What he didn't realize was that my father's trust had a clause, one that kicked in automatically if assets were taken under duress or deceit. Tessa activated that clause. We filed a transfer motion. Ownership returned to me under the trust's protection. I didn't need Ethan to agree. Legally, he was now a guest in my home. I moved swiftly, precisely. Next were the bank accounts. The joint checking? Frozen. Credit cards? Canceled and reissued in my name only. I created a new account in a different bank under my daughter's name, funded it with the remaining safe savings they hadn't touched. My name was listed as guardian. No one else. Tessa then filed for postnuptial fraud. She called it surgical revenge. No courtroom drama. No emotional pleas. Just paperwork and precision. We outlined the theft, the forged access, the hidden transactions. We submitted security footage, bank statements, and screenshots. We filed for asset recovery and began the formal eviction process. And through it all, I said nothing. Not to Ethan. Not to Nancy. At night, I made dinner. Fed my daughter. Sat across from him as he talked about football or work or his new favorite show. I nodded. Smiled. He had no idea the house beneath him was no longer his. He had no idea that every bite of food came from a woman who had already erased him from her future. There was a moment, over chicken and roasted potatoes, when he looked at me and said, "You've been really calm lately. I was worried you'd freak out about the money. I'm glad you understand." I met his eyes. "I do understand," I said. And I meant it. Because what I understood now, with crystal clarity, was that I didn't owe anyone a warning before I walked away. I owed myself peace. And that peace would come once he was gone. All I had to do was wait for morning. The sun rose slowly that morning, casting soft light across the hardwood floors of the living room. I stood barefoot by the window, my daughter resting against my chest, swaddled and sleeping. Her tiny breaths rose and fell like waves, calm, steady, untouched by the storm outside. Across the lawn, Ethan was pacing in yesterday's clothes, his phone pressed tight to his ear. His mother, Nancy, stood beside two overstuffed suitcases, arms folded, lips pinched, her expression a cocktail of confusion and insult. The locksmith had arrived at dawn. Quiet, professional, efficient. Every lock in the house was now changed. The final legal filings had gone through the night before. Ownership transferred. Accounts frozen. Eviction notice approved. Tessa texted me. "It's done. You're protected. You can proceed."
So I did.
I walked to the front door slowly, balancing my daughter in one arm and a folder in the other. I opened it and stepped outside. Ethan turned, surprised. His mom scoffed like she was looking at someone beneath her. I handed him the envelope. "What's this?" he asked, already frowning. "Legal notice," I said calmly. "You have 20 minutes to vacate the property. You've already been removed from the deed. You're trespassing now." Nancy snatched the papers from his hand and began flipping through them. Her face twisted. "This is ridiculous," she barked. "You can't just throw us out." I shifted my daughter slightly, holding her close. "You're not being thrown out," I said softly. "You're being returned to the life you built." Ethan stepped toward me. "Madison, wait. Let's talk." "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearer than I ever have." I cut in. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. "I gave you everything," I said. "And when I was at my most vulnerable, you took from me. You robbed your wife while she was giving birth to your child. That money was just sitting there."
"It was my father's," I said.
"It was my business. My legacy. And you treated it like loose change. Like I was just your bank account with a ring on her finger." Nancy scoffed again. "You're lucky Ethan even married you." I looked at her then, really looked at her. A woman so bitter she'd rather poison her own son's marriage than see him love someone stronger than herself. I smiled. "You're right. I was lucky. Because now I know exactly who you both are." Ethan reached for me again. "Madison, please. Don't do this to our family." I glanced down at the tiny face resting against my heart. "Our family," I said, "is right here." I turned, stepped back inside.
"Close the door."
Their voices rose behind me. Angry.
Panicked.
Unbelieving. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. Because what they didn't realize was that by stealing from me, they'd handed me the permission I never gave myself to let them go without guilt. And as my daughter stirred gently in my arms, I whispered to her, "This is your home now. Just us. Just peace." And for the first time in years, I breathed. 2 days after the eviction, I got the notification. Nancy had gone online. She posted a long, carefully written message, the kind that reeks of staged concern and thinly veiled lies. On Facebook, where drama spreads faster than facts. In a neighborhood group chat. Even on her church's prayer forum. She painted herself as the victim. Claimed I had kicked a sick old woman out on the street. Said I had turned Ethan's own child against him. That I was emotionally unstable since childbirth and had stolen family funds in a moment of postpartum rage. There were tears in her words, fake ones. Pity bait. Just enough sweetness to make herself look soft and broken. And for a moment, I was tempted to let her have it. But I didn't need to, because I had receipts. I posted 3 screenshots. No caption. No hashtags. No rage. The bank transfer logs from Ethan to Nancy, marked as gift and loan payoff. A still from the security footage, time-stamped, showing both of them at the safe. A copy of the inheritance transfer form Ethan forged without my consent. Then I logged off. Let silence do the rest. The backlash was immediate. Comments poured in beneath Nancy's original post. Wait, wasn't this money Madison inherited from her dad? Isn't that illegal? I thought Ethan was successful. Why was he stealing from his wife? That baby was just born. Who does this to a new mom? People shared the screenshots, texted each other, whispered in grocery store aisles. By evening, Ethan's LinkedIn account vanished, and the next day, word came in. He'd been fired. His company had a zero-tolerance policy for financial misconduct, even if it was domestic, especially if it became public. A week later, I got a call from a mutual friend, not to check on me, but to warn me. Nancy had been evicted from her condo. Apparently, the money Ethan gave her had been blown, spent on designer handbags, a trip to Vegas, and a wellness retreat she'd booked the week I was in labor. She had nothing left. She tried calling me.
Blocked.
She tried leaving a message. Deleted. I didn't respond. I didn't retaliate. I just watched, quiet, unmoved, done. Because here's the thing no one tells you. The loudest revenge is not screaming back. It's doing nothing while the people who hurt you collapse under the weight of what they built. Their lies. Their greed. Their ego. I didn't have to drag them through the mud. They leapt in headfirst. And while they flailed, I rocked my daughter to sleep, lit a candle, and turned up the music in our quiet, peaceful home. No words. No warnings. Just justice. The first time I told the full story publicly, it wasn't in a courtroom or a confrontation. It was in a caption. I posted a photo of my hand holding a ring, one I'd forged myself. A hammered gold band with 3 notches carved into it, each one representing a loss. My trust, my savings, and my marriage. Underneath the photo, I wrote, built from theft, reclaimed by strength. This is not a broken woman's ring. It's a survivor's crown. I didn't tag Ethan. I didn't name Nancy. I didn't have to. The internet already knew. The post exploded overnight. Thousands of women commented. Some shared their own betrayals, money stolen, names erased, identities sacrificed. Others just said thank you. Thank you for not shrinking. Thank you for choosing healing over hate.
So I leaned in.
Cole Legacy Designs became more than jewelry. It became a movement. We launched a new campaign under the name House of Glass, a metaphor for transparency, vulnerability, and quiet power. Every piece told a story. Rings engraved with whispered truths. Lockets that could hold scars in the shape of strength. Pendants that reminded women that survival is not silence. Business tripled. I hired 3 new artisans, all single moms rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. We started hosting workshops in the back of the studio on financial literacy, budgeting, legal rights in marriage, how to protect yourself without apology. I partnered with a nonprofit to offer free consultations to women dealing with economic manipulation. We weren't just making jewelry anymore. We were arming women with information. And every time I stepped into the studio and saw a woman learning how to open her first savings account or sketching her first design, I felt it. The empire Ethan tried to steal? I had rebuilt it from the ash, cleaner, stronger mine.
My daughter grew alongside it.
Her laughter became the heartbeat of the space. Customers would ask to see her. She had her own little rocking chair in the corner of the showroom. She didn't know it yet, but she had already saved me. She was my reason, my why, my reminder that building something better isn't just possible, it's necessary. When she turned 1, I bought a second home. Not for vacations, but for retreats. A quiet cabin with wide windows and open skies. A place where overworked women could come and rest, breathe, and remember who they were before the world told them to be smaller. We offered weekend workshops, healing circles, morning meditations, financial coaching. No mirrors. No expectations. Just space to exhale. I called it the landing, because that's what it felt like, a safe landing after freefall. And the woman Ethan thought he'd left broken? She wasn't just standing. She was opening doors for others. 1 year to the day. The sun filtered through the skylights in the studio, casting soft gold across the display cases. Everything shimmered, silver cuffs engraved with healing proverbs, rose gold rings etched with survivor dates, sapphires set into tiny shields. I walked in before opening hours, alone. The scent of lavender oil still lingered from last night's retreat group. Somewhere in the back room, a playlist hummed faintly, calming strings over distant ocean sounds. My daughter's picture hung above the welcome desk. Not posed, just a moment I captured of her laughing in the grass, clutching a daisy like it was the whole world. I walked to the far corner, behind the glass displays and shipping station, to the drawer I rarely opened. It was lined in velvet, worn with time. Inside sat a single item, a small gold locket, slightly scuffed on the edges, its hinge still smooth after all these years. The only piece I never sold, never redesigned, never gave away. It was for my father. He gave it to me on the night before he passed, his hands trembling as he placed it in mine. He said, "You'll make beauty out of anything. Just don't forget to protect yourself while you do it." I clicked it open. Inside, I had placed 2 things. A photo of my newborn daughter on the day she was born, her eyes just opening, and a tiny folded note, the same one I kept from years ago, now smoothed and re-inked in my own handwriting. It read, "Leave no part of yourself where you're not safe." I ran my thumb across the edge of the locket. That sentence used to feel like a warning. Now it felt like a compass. Ethan and his mother had taken nearly everything they could, money, property, my sense of safety. But they never got this. Not the locket. Not the lesson. Not the core of who I am. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. It was about reclamation. About remembering that what we build in pain can still become sanctuary. That what's stolen can be earned back, cleaner, brighter, ours. I placed the locket around my neck, feeling its quiet weight settle like armor. Then I opened the studio. The bell above the door chimed. A mother and daughter stepped in. The girl barely 12, wide-eyed at the sparkle around her. "Can we look at the lockets?" the mother asked softly. I smiled. "Of course," I said. "Let me show you the ones that last." Because I knew now, truly, deeply, that shine fades. Surface wears. Glitter lies. But real value? Real strength? Real worth? That comes from what you protect. From what you survive. And from what you choose not to give away. They took what shimmered, but I kept what shines.
And it was never for them.